The gate in front of me is glowing red. Tenfold intensity. Nobody has ever walked into a Tenfold Crucible and walked back out. And right now, 300 students are watching me step toward it like I'm about to become a headline nobody wants to read. Someone behind me laughs. He's actually going in. He's actually going to die in there. I don't turn around. My heart is hammering, but not from fear, from something else. Something they wouldn't understand even if I explained it to their faces. The moment the gate opens, 30 monsters flood out at once. Claws, fangs, screeching things with too many eyes. The kind of nightmare that ends careers, ends lives, ends everything a person ever hoped to become. I walk forward, not run, walk. And that's when everything goes quiet, because the first monster's head hits the ground before anyone even sees my hand move. Gasps ripple through the crowd. Someone drops a tablet. An instructor chokes on his own words mid-sentence. And I keep walking, calm, bored almost, while the rest of the monsters fall one after another like they were never a threat to begin with. This is not supposed to be possible. Not for someone ranked the way I'm ranked. Not for someone everyone in this academy has spent 3 years calling a joke. But I had no choice. If I showed even a fraction of what I actually am, back when I first arrived here, they would have looked at me the way you look at something dangerous instead of something pathetic. And pathetic was safer. Pathetic let me disappear into the back of every classroom while I quietly became something none of them could imagine. 3 years ago, none of this made sense either. 3 years ago, I was the kid nobody wanted on their team, the kid whose name got skipped during roll call jokes, the kid who got shoved into the Hollow Rift as a training exercise that was really just an excuse to get rid of someone the academy considered dead weight. They didn't expect me to survive that. They definitely didn't expect me to come back different. My name is Ashton Kade, and until 3 years ago, I was ranked F. Dead last. Untalented. A waste of a scholarship seat, according to half my instructors and every single one of my classmates. The academy I attend, Grimwood Institute, trains hunters to fight the monsters that spill out from rifts scattered across the world. Every student gets ranked from S down to F, based on how much raw power their body can channel. S-rank students get parades. F-rank students get pity. Or worse, they get ignored completely. I was the worst F-rank they had ever seen. My power reading was so low that some instructors thought the measuring crystal was broken. They tested it twice. It wasn't broken. I was just that empty. Until the day they threw me into the Hollow Rift as punishment for wasting valuable training resources, a group of upperclassmen decided I didn't deserve. The Hollow Rift wasn't even supposed to be accessible. It was sealed off, marked as unstable, listed as abandoned on every academy record, which made it the perfect place to shove an inconvenient F-rank student and let the problem solve itself. I remember falling through the dark. I remember landing in a place that didn't feel like it belonged to this world. Black sand, a red sky with no sun, and in the center of it all, a throne carved from something that looked like bone, sitting empty, waiting. I didn't know it then, but that throne had been waiting for someone like me for a very long time. I was down there for what felt like weeks, maybe longer. Time didn't behave normally inside the rift. I fought things that didn't have names, things that shouldn't exist, things that would have killed any hunter twice my age in seconds. And somehow, every time I almost died, something inside me answered back. A voice. Cold, ancient, patient. "You are not strong enough yet," it told me the first time I nearly got torn apart by a creature made of shifting shadow. "But you are stubborn enough. That will have to do." I didn't understand what it meant then. I understand it perfectly now. By the time I climbed out of that rift, 3 days had passed on the surface. Nobody expected me to come back. The instructors had already filed the paperwork marking me as lost. My return caused actual panic, because dead students don't walk back through the front gate covered in black dust with eyes that used to be brown now flickering faint red at the edges. They asked me what happened. I told them nothing. I told them I got lucky. That was the first lie. It wouldn't be the last. Because the truth was, something inside that rift had chosen me. Not the academy, not fate. Something ancient and hungry had looked at the most useless student in Grimwood history and decided I was worth keeping alive. I spent the next 3 years hiding what I became. Every night, after classes ended and the dorms went quiet, I trained in secret. Not with the sparring bots the academy provided, with something else. A system that only I could see. One that pulsed faintly across my vision whenever I focused hard enough. Contract active. Hollow Throne Bloodline status. Awakening current suppression level. 91%. That last line terrified me the first time I saw it. Suppression, as if my actual power was being held back on purpose, locked behind some invisible wall that only lowered a fraction at a time, and only when I proved I could handle it. I asked the voice why. It answered the way it always did, short and merciless. Because if the world sees what you are before you're ready to control it, the world will try to kill you first and ask questions never. So I stayed quiet. I stayed F rank on paper, while I became something else entirely underneath. I let people underestimate me because being underestimated was the safest disguise I could wear. And it worked. For 3 years, it worked perfectly. Until today. Until the Tenfold Crucible, the exam that separates true talents from everyone else, the exam that has killed 6 students in the past 2 years alone, the exam where I was scheduled at the very last slot because nobody thought I would even bother showing up. I showed up. And I just walked through 30 monsters without breaking a sweat, in front of every single person who spent 3 years laughing at me. The examination hall goes dead silent. Even the observation crystal, the one that's supposed to calculate my performance in real time, freezes for a solid 5 seconds like it genuinely does not know what number to display. Then it flickers back to life. Score, unrecorded, exceeds measurable threshold. Somewhere in the crowd, someone whispers, "That's not possible." It's about to get a lot less possible. Because standing near the observation platform, arms crossed, jaw tight with something between disbelief and fury, is Damien Cross. S rank. Golden boy of the entire academy. The guy who's been first in every ranking since the day he enrolled. The guy who once told an entire lecture hall that F ranks like me shouldn't even be allowed to breathe the same academy air as real hunters. He's staring at me like I just stole something that belonged to him. He has no idea how right he is. Because the throne inside that rift didn't whisper to just anyone. It whispered to me. And now that a fraction of that power has finally cracked through the surface, there's no putting it back. The head instructor, a stern woman named Instructor Voss who has spent 3 years treating me like an afterthought, steps forward with her tablet trembling slightly in her hand. "Kade," she says, voice tight, "explain what just happened. I could lie again. I've gotten good at lying." But something about the look on her face, somewhere between fear and fascination, tells me the lies are about to stop working. "I trained," I say simply. "That's all." It's technically true. It's also the understatement of my entire life. Instructor Voss doesn't buy it. Neither does Damien. Neither does the small crowd of students now whispering my name like it's suddenly worth remembering. And that's when the real problem starts. Because the moment word spreads that an F-rank student cleared a tenfold crucible with zero visible effort, every faction in this academy is going to want a piece of me. The instructors who want to study what I am, the rival students who want to prove I cheated, the council members who fund this academy and have a very ugly habit of recruiting anything they consider a strategic asset, whether that thing wants to be recruited or not. I had exactly one plan when I walked into that exam. Clear it quietly, keep my head down, disappear back into the background before anyone asked too many questions. That plan just detonated in front of 300 witnesses. Sarah Vance finds me before I even make it back to the dorm hallway. She's the top-ranked girl in our year, the kind of hunter people describe in one breath as terrifyingly talented, and in the next breath as the only decent person in the S-rank track. Unlike Damien, she never mocked me. She barely noticed me, honestly, which at the time felt like a mercy. She's noticing me now. "Ashton," she says my name carefully, like she's testing whether it still means what it used to. "What was that?" "Luck," I say. "That wasn't luck." Her eyes narrow, sharp and searching. "I've seen S-rank hunters flinch during a 5-fold crucible. You walk through tenfold like it was a stroll through the courtyard." I don't answer right away. She doesn't push. Not immediately, but I can tell by the way she studies my face that she's already decided this conversation isn't over. She's the kind of person who collects mysteries the way other people collect grudges. Patiently, thoroughly, without ever letting go once she's grabbed hold. "You've been hiding something," she finally says. Not a question, a conclusion. "Everyone hides something," I answer. It's a deflection, and she knows it, but for now she lets it go. Lets it go the way a hunter lets an injured prey limp a little farther before the real chase begins. That night, alone in my dorm, the interface flickers back to life in front of my eyes. The way it always does when the world gets too loud and I need somewhere quiet to look. Suppression level, 84% new title unlocked. The unmeasured, 7%. That's what today cost me. Or rather, that's what today unlocked. 7% closer to whatever waits at 0. I don't know what happens when the suppression finally breaks completely. Part of me is terrified to find out. Part of me, the part that grows a little louder every day, actually wants to. The voice from the rift speaks less often now than it used to. But when it does, it's never comforting. They will not let this go. It tells me that night, low and certain, like it's already seen this exact moment play out 1,000 times before. You have shown them a piece of what you are. Now they will try to take the rest. Who's they? I ask. Silence. Then, finally, everyone who realizes what sits on that throne is no longer empty. I don't sleep much after that. The next morning, I'm summoned to the dean's office, which is a phrase that has never, not once in academy history, ended well for the student receiving it. Dean Alaric Vane runs Grimwood with the kind of calm authority that makes even S-rank students go quiet in his presence. He's the one who decides which students get council funding, which students get erased from records entirely after failing too many times, and which students get handed opportunities the rest of us can only dream about. He's staring at a data slate showing my Crucible results when I walk in. The number on it still just says unrecorded. Do you know how rare it is? He says without looking up. For a Tenfold Crucible reading to break the measurement system entirely? No, sir. Neither do I. He finally lifts his eyes to mine, and there's something calculating behind them that makes the back of my neck prickle. It's happened exactly twice in this academy's 200-year history. Both times, the student in question ended up either dead, missing, or recruited directly into the council's Black Division within a month. My stomach drops. Which one am I going to be? I ask, mostly to fill the silence, because the alternative is standing there and letting him see how much that sentence just terrified me. Dean Vane almost smiles. Almost. That depends entirely on what you tell me next, Mr. Kade. I had spent 3 years building the perfect lie, layer after layer, carefully constructed so nobody would ever look too closely. And in the span of one conversation, I can feel every layer of it starting to crack under the weight of a man who's clearly already decided he knows more than I've told him. So I do the only thing that makes sense in that moment. I lie again, bigger this time. I tell him about a hidden bloodline awakening naturally, something vague enough to sound plausible, specific enough to sound rehearsed, and completely disconnected from the actual truth sitting inside a sealed rift that isn't supposed to be accessible anymore. He listens, he nods slowly, and then he says the words that confirm my worst fear. Interesting, he says. Because the Hollow Rift's containment seal registered activity 3 years ago, the same week you were reported missing during a supposed training incident. I freeze. He knows. Or at least, he knows enough to be dangerous. I'm not accusing you of anything, Dean Vane continues, folding his hands calmly on his desk like we're discussing the weather instead of the biggest secret of my life. I'm simply telling you that Grimwood does not like unanswered questions involving unstable rifts. And I would strongly suggest you figure out how to answer this one before someone with far less patience than me starts asking it instead. He dismisses me without another word. I walk out of that office feeling like the floor underneath the entire academy just shifted, and I'm the only one who can feel it moving. That night, I don't go straight back to my dorm. I climb up to the old observation tower instead, the one nobody uses anymore because the elevator's been broken since before I enrolled. And I sit on the edge of the railing looking out over the academy grounds, trying to make sense of everything that just happened in the span of 24 hours. 3 years of hiding, gone in one exam. I keep replaying Dean Vane's words in my head. 2 students in 200 years broke the measurement system the way I just did. Both ended up dead, missing, or recruited into something called the Council's Black Division. None of those options sound like a future I actually want. Footsteps echo up the stairwell behind me. I don't need to turn around to know who it is. Sarah has a way of walking that's too quiet to be careless, and too deliberate to be anything but intentional. You come up here a lot? She asks, settling onto the railing a few feet away from me, instead of demanding answers immediately, which I appreciate more than she probably realizes. Sometimes, I admit. It's quiet. Nobody bothers me up here. I'm bothering you right now. You're the exception. That earns the smallest flicker of a smile from her, gone almost as fast as it appears. She's quiet for a long moment, staring out at the same view I've been staring at, before she finally asks the question I know has been building since the Crucible. Why did you hide it? All of it. For 3 years? I think about lying again. The habit is so deeply built into me at this point that the lie almost comes out automatically, smooth and practiced. But something about the honesty of the last 2 days makes the truth feel less dangerous than it used to. Because the moment people found out what I actually was, I say slowly, they'd stop seeing me as a person and start seeing me as a weapon, or a threat, or a problem to be managed. Being an F rank, nobody meant I got to just exist. The second that changes, I stop being Ashton and start being an asset. Sarah doesn't say anything right away. When she finally speaks, her voice is quieter than before. For what it's worth, she says, I don't see you as an asset. What do you see me as then? She hesitates, just long enough that I know the answer matters to her more than she wants to admit. Someone who's been carrying something heavy, alone, for way too long. I don't have a response for that. Not one I'm ready to say out loud anyway. So we just sit there in silence, the two of us, looking out over an academy that's about to look at me completely differently starting tomorrow morning. Neither of us knows yet just how much more differently. Word about the Crucible spreads through Grimwood like wildfire over the next 2 days. By the time I make it to my next class, half the room goes silent when I walk in, and the other half starts whispering the second they think I can't hear them. That's him, the F rank who broke the scoring system. I heard the examiners are recommending him for early graduation. I heard the council already sent someone to evaluate him. I heard he cheated. There's no way an F rank does that legitimately. That last rumor, predictably, comes from Damien's circle. He corners me after class, flanked by 2 other S-rank students who look like they'd rather be literally anywhere else. Damien doesn't do subtlety. He never has. You cheated, he says, loud enough for half the hallway to hear. There's no version of this where an F rank clears tenfold clean. Someone tampered with the crystal, or you had help, or I trained harder than you did, I cut in. The hallway goes dead silent. Damien's jaw tightens. For someone who's spent 3 years being told he's the best hunter in our entire year, being challenged by the person he's mocked the longest clearly isn't landing well. Prove it, he says. Sparring match. Tomorrow, in front of everyone. If you're really this strong, show it directly instead of hiding behind a Crucible score nobody can verify. I should say no. Every instinct built over 3 years of careful hiding screams at me to say no, to deflect, to disappear the way I've always disappeared whenever attention got too close. But something else, something new, something that's been growing louder since the moment that suppression level dropped to 84%, tells me a different answer entirely. Fine, I say. Tomorrow. Damien smirks like he's already won. He has no idea what he just walked into. The sparring match the next day draws a crowd that would make an actual tournament jealous. Word spreads fast in an academy built entirely around competition and reputation, and by the time Damien and I step into the arena, nearly the entire student body has packed into the observation stands, along with 3 instructors and, notably, Dean Vane himself standing quietly near the back. Sarah is there too, arms crossed, watching me with an expression I can't quite read. Curiosity, concern, maybe both. Damien wastes no time. The moment the match starts, he comes at me full force, channeling enough raw energy to crack the reinforced arena floor beneath his feet. He's fast. He's strong. On paper, he's exactly what an S-rank student should be. On paper. I dodge the first strike without really trying. The second one too. By the third, Damien's confident smirk starts slipping, replaced by something closer to confusion. Stand still, he snaps. Why would I do that? I answer. The crowd gasps as I close the distance faster than anyone expects, faster than anyone here has ever seen an F-rank move, and land a single controlled strike that sends Damien skidding backward across the arena floor. He gets back up immediately, furious now, channeling even more power than before, desperate to prove the first hit was a fluke. He throws everything he has into the next attack, a full-force strike meant to end the match instantly. I catch it with one hand. The entire arena goes silent. I could end this right here. I could show them exactly what 3 years of secret training inside a sealed rift actually built. Part of me, the loud part, the part connected to a throne that's still waiting patiently for me somewhere in the dark, wants nothing more than to let go completely and show every single person who ever doubted me exactly how wrong they were. But I don't. Not fully. because showing everything here, in front of the dean, in front of the entire student body, would be exactly the kind of attention the voice warned me about. So instead, I release Damien's strike, step back, and simply say, "That's enough." Damien stares at me, chest heaving, humiliation burning across his face in front of the entire academy. "This isn't over," he mutters. "It really is," I answer. "You just don't want it to be." The crowd erupts into noise, some cheering, some stunned into silence, some already pulling out their tablets to record everything for the Academy network. Damien storms off the arena floor without another word, and for the first time in 3 years, I feel something I haven't felt since before I got thrown into that rift. Respect. Actual, real respect, radiating from a crowd that used to laugh at me. It should feel good. For a moment it does. For a few minutes, standing in the middle of that arena while the crowd cheers and Damien storms off in humiliated silence, I actually let myself believe things might settle down. Maybe the worst of it is over. Maybe I proved my point, earned some respect, and now I can quietly go back to blending into the background, just with slightly better rumors attached to my name. Sarah walks up to me while the crowd starts filtering out, arena staff already moving in to repair the cracked floor tiles. "You held back," she says. "It's not a question. I don't know what you're talking about." "Ashton." She says my name the way you'd say it to someone you've caught in an obvious lie and simply don't feel like arguing about right now. "You caught an S-rank strike with one hand and didn't even flinch." That wasn't holding back a little. That was holding back almost everything. I don't answer because she's right, and there's no version of denying it that would actually sound convincing at this point. "Why?" she asks, quieter this time. "Because some things are safer left unseen," I say. Even after today, she studies me for a long moment, like she's weighing whether to push further, before finally nodding slowly. "Okay," she says. "But for what it's worth, whatever you're hiding underneath all of that restraint, I don't think it's something you should be scared of. You don't know what it is." "No," she agrees, "but I know what it isn't. It isn't cruelty. It isn't cheating. Whatever power you're sitting on, you've spent 3 years choosing not to use it to hurt people, even when hurting people would have been easier than being laughed at every single day. That tells me more about you than any Crucible score ever could." I don't have a response ready for that. Nobody's ever put it quite like that before, not even the voice from the Rift, which only ever seems to care about strength, thresholds, and suppression percentages. Sarah's the first person who's ever looked at the same information and landed on something closer to character. Before I can figure out what to say back, a few other students start approaching, tentative and awkward, clearly testing whether it's safe to talk to me now that I'm apparently not the academy joke anymore. One girl I vaguely recognize from an introductory tactics class asks if the rumors about the Crucible score are true. A boy who once accidentally tripped me in a hallway during my first year suddenly wants to know if I'd be willing to review his combat form sometime. It's strange, being seen instead of overlooked. 3 years of invisibility trained me to expect indifference as the default setting of the entire world, and now, in the space of 2 days, that default has flipped entirely. Part of me wants to enjoy it. Part of me, the more cautious part, the part that spent 3 years hiding for a reason, can't stop scanning the crowd for anyone whose curiosity might tip over into something more dangerous. That instinct turns out to be exactly right, though not in the direction I expected. Then the alarms start. They don't sound like the normal training alerts. These are different, deeper, the kind of siren the Academy only uses for one specific emergency: rift breach. Instructor Voss's voice cuts through the arena's speakers, sharp with barely controlled panic. "All students, evacuate to designated shelters immediately." This is not a drill. Repeat, this is not a drill. Chaos erupts instantly. Students scramble toward exits, instructors shouting directions, the entire arena transforming from a place of celebration into a place of genuine fear within seconds. I don't move toward the exits, because through the chaos, I feel something pulling at the edges of my awareness, something familiar, something that makes the mark on my chest, the one shaped like a small, jagged crown that appeared the day I climbed out of the hollow rift, burn hot beneath my shirt. The breach isn't random, it's connected to the rift, my rift. I sprint toward the source instead of away from it, ignoring every shouted order to evacuate, weaving through panicked students until I reach the academy's central courtyard, where the ground has cracked open into a swirling void of black and red energy, exactly the same colors as the sky I remember from 3 years ago. Something is climbing out of it. Something huge. The creature that emerges stands twice as tall as any monster I fought inside the rift, its body made of shifting shadow and bone, eyes glowing the exact shade of red that used to flicker at the edges of my own vision during my first weeks down there. Instructors who arrive to intervene get thrown aside like they weigh nothing. Even Damien, who charges in trying to prove himself all over again, gets slammed into a stone pillar hard enough to crack it. Dean Vane arrives moments later, and for the first time since I've known him, I see genuine fear cross his face. "That's not a normal rift creature," he says, mostly to himself. "That's a throne guardian." The words hit something deep inside me, something the voice from the rift never fully explained. A throne guardian. Something meant to protect the exact seat of power sitting empty at the center of my rift, the same throne that's been quietly waiting for me to finish becoming whatever I'm supposed to become. It's here because of me. The guardian's gaze sweeps across the courtyard until it lands directly on me, and something like recognition flickers across those glowing red eyes. "Vessel," it says, voice like grinding stone. "You have not claimed the throne, yet you carry its mark. This is forbidden." Every instructor still standing turns to stare at me. Sarah's eyes go wide. Even Dean Vane, a man who rarely shows surprise, looks at me like he's finally connecting every piece he's been quietly gathering since our conversation in his office. "Ashton," Sarah says carefully. "What is it talking about?" I don't have time to explain. The Guardian raises one massive shadow-formed arm and slams it down toward the crowd of instructors trying to hold it back, and I know instantly that none of them are going to survive the impact. I had spent 3 years hiding exactly what I am to avoid a moment exactly like this one. That plan is over now. I move without thinking, faster than I've ever allowed myself to move in public, closing the distance and catching the Guardian's strike with both hands. The impact sends a shockwave through the entire courtyard, cracking stone, shattering windows, throwing dust into the air thick enough to blot out the sky. But I hold. The suppression level flashing in the corner of my vision drops hard and fast. Suppression level, 60%, 45%, 30%. The voice from the rift speaks louder than it ever has before, no longer distant, no longer patient. "This is the moment," it says. "Choose now, hide forever, or become what the throne always intended." I don't hesitate. I choose, I say, loud enough for the Guardian, for the instructors, for every terrified student still watching from the shelter entrances, to stop pretending. Power floods through me like a dam breaking after 3 years of careful containment. The mark on my chest burns white hot, and for the first time since I climbed out of that rift, I let everything the throne has been building inside me come out all at once. The Guardian's arm shatters under the force of my counterstrike. The creature stumbles backward, genuine shock replacing the cold certainty in its glowing eyes. "Impossible," it grinds out. "The suppression should not have broken this fast. You are not ready." "Funny," I answer, stepping forward as shadow and crimson energy swirl around me, forming something that looks unsettlingly close to a crown hovering just above my head. Nobody ever asked if I was ready. I just decided to be. What happens next takes less than a minute, though it feels like it stretches across an entire lifetime for everyone watching. I move faster than the Guardian can track, striking with power that cracks reality itself at the edges, until the massive shadow creature finally collapses into the courtyard, dissolving into black mist that gets pulled back toward the crack in the ground it originally emerged from. Silence falls over the courtyard, broken only by the sound of dust settling and distant sirens finally catching up to the crisis that's already over. Every single person watching, students, instructors, even Dean Vane, stares at me like they're seeing me for the first time in their lives. Maybe they are. Sarah is the first to break the silence, walking slowly toward me, while the rest of the crowd stays frozen in place. "You just," she starts, then stops, shaking her head like she's trying to process what her own eyes just witnessed. "You just took down a throne guardian, alone, with your bare hands." "Yeah," I say, exhaling slowly as the crown of energy above my head fades back into nothing. "I did." "How long?" she asks quietly. "Have you been hiding this?" I look around at the courtyard, at the cracked stone, at the crowd of people who spent 3 years treating me like I was worthless, now staring at me like I might be the most important person in the entire academy. 3 years? I answer honestly, because there's finally no point in lying anymore. Since the day everyone decided I wasn't worth keeping around and threw me somewhere they thought would finish the job. Dean Vane steps forward, his expression unreadable, calculating in a way that makes it clear this conversation is far from over. "Mr. Kade," he says carefully, "I think it's time you and I had a much longer conversation about exactly what happened inside that rift, and exactly what the council is going to want to do once they hear about this. I already know that conversation isn't going to be simple. Dean Vane mentioned it himself, back in his office. Students who break measurement systems don't get to quietly return to normal classes. They get noticed, they get recruited, or worse, they get taken. But something else is bothering me even more than the council, more than the instructors, more than the crowd of students already whispering my name like it's a legend, instead of just a person." The Guardian's words replayed the moment before I destroyed it, low and certain, almost like a warning wrapped inside a threat. "You are not the only one who carries a mark," it had said, right before collapsing into mist. "The throne has more than one heir, and the others will not let you claim it without a fight." I thought I was the only person who ever survived long enough to touch that throne. I thought the mark on my chest made me unique, the only person the Hollow Rift ever chose. I was wrong. Somewhere out there, someone else carries the same crown-shaped mark I do. Someone who's been hiding exactly the way I have been. Someone who just found out, the same way I did, that their suppression is starting to break. And judging by the way the Guardian spoke, that person is not going to be happy about sharing what they believe belongs to them alone. The Academy doesn't get a single quiet moment after that. Within an hour, cleanup crews are swarming the courtyard. Instructors are arguing over containment protocols, and a full Academy lockdown goes into effect, while the Dean tries to figure out how to explain a Throne Guardian breach to whoever sits above him in the chain of command. I'm escorted, not arrested, escorted, the distinction apparently mattering a great deal to the two silent staff members walking on either side of me, back to Dean Vane's office. This time, he's not alone. A woman stands near the window, arms folded, wearing a long black coat with a silver emblem stitched over the chest that I don't recognize, though something about it makes the mark on my own chest pulse uncomfortably the second I walk in. She doesn't introduce herself right away. She just studies me, the way you'd study a specimen instead of a person, for a long, uncomfortable stretch of silence. "This is Agent Renata Cole," Dean Vane finally says, and something in his tone tells me he's not thrilled about this introduction either. "She represents the Council's Rift Anomaly Division. Black Division," I say before I can stop myself. Agent Cole's mouth curves into something that isn't quite a smile. "I see the rumors already reached you. Good. Saves us the awkward explanation. I'm not interested in being recruited," I say flatly. "Nobody said anything about recruitment," she answers, stepping closer, footsteps unnervingly silent against the office floor. "Yet, right now, I'm simply here to observe. A Throne Guardian breach isn't a small anomaly, Mr. Kade. It's a Category 1 event. Do you understand what that means?" I don't answer, mostly because I genuinely don't know, and I've had enough of pretending to know things in front of powerful people for one lifetime. "It means," she continues, "that somewhere out there, a dormant power source just woke up enough to send a Guardian hunting for its vessel. That doesn't happen randomly. That happens when a bloodline reaches a threshold. Which means the question isn't whether the Council is going to get involved in your life, Mr. Kade. The question is simply how involved, and how soon." The mark on my chest burns hotter, like it's reacting to her words directly, and for a brief second, Agent Cole's eyes flick toward my shirt with an expression I can't quite place. Recognition, maybe. Or hunger. "You said the throne has more than one heir," I say slowly, remembering the Guardian's final words before it dissolved. "Do you know who the others are?" Something shifts behind Agent Cole's expression, quick and controlled, like she's deciding in real time how much truth she's willing to hand over. "The Council has been tracking anomalous bloodline activity for the past several years," she finally says. "Small incidents, isolated rift disturbances. Individually, none of them meant much. Together, they form a pattern that leads directly back to the same sealed rift you disappeared into 3 years ago. How many others?" I press. "At least 2 that we're aware of," she says. "Possibly more we haven't found yet. And Mr. Kade, based on everything I witnessed in that courtyard today, I can tell you with total confidence that you are, by a significant margin, the furthest along in your awakening. Which means, whether you intended it or not, you just became the biggest target in this entire situation." Dean Vane finally speaks up, arms crossed, expression grim. "What exactly are you suggesting, Agent Cole?" "I'm suggesting," she says, eyes never leaving mine, That whoever else carries that mark is going to feel this breach the same way Mr. Kade felt his suppression drop, and they are going to come looking for answers, possibly for him directly. The room goes quiet. Outside the window, I can still see smoke rising faintly from the courtyard where the Guardian collapsed, a physical reminder of exactly how close disaster came to swallowing this entire academy in one afternoon. So what happens now? I ask, and for the first time since I walked out of that rift 3 years ago, I genuinely don't have a plan. No lie prepared, no careful strategy to disappear back into obscurity. Just a question, hanging in the air, waiting for someone else to answer it for once. Agent Cole studies me a moment longer before finally turning toward the door. Now, she says, you train. Properly this time with people who understand exactly what that mark on your chest actually means. Because the next time something comes through a rift looking for you, Mr. Kade, it might not be a Guardian testing whether you're worthy. She pauses at the doorway, glancing back one last time. It might be one of the other heirs. And unlike a Guardian, they won't be interested in testing you at all. The door closes behind her, leaving me standing in the dean's office with more questions than I walked in with, and a future that no longer resembles anything close to the quiet, hidden life I spent 3 years carefully building. That night, back in my dorm, the interface flickers into view one final time before I finally let myself close my eyes. Suppression level, 12%. Warning. Second bloodline signature detected within regional range. I stare at that warning for a long time before it fades. I thought clearing that crucible was the hardest thing I would ever have to do at this academy. I had absolutely no idea what was actually coming for me. The office door hasn't even finished sliding shut behind me when Agent Cole sets a black folder on Dean Vane's desk and says the words that turn my stomach to ice. Sign this, Mr. Kade, and none of your friends get hurt when the council decides you're a liability instead of an asset. Nobody moves. Dean Vane's jaw tightens like he wants to say something and knows better. The folder sits there, closed, waiting, the council's silver emblem stamped across the front of it like a brand. That's not a request, I say. That's a threat wearing a nicer coat. Everything the council does is wearing a nicer coat, Cole answers, not even blinking. Doesn't make it less true. My hand curls into a fist at my side, and for half a second, the mark on my chest pulses hot enough that I'm sure she can see it through my shirt. She doesn't look away. She's waiting to see if I'll do something stupid. I don't. 2 days ago, none of this existed. 2 days ago, I was still the F rank nobody bothered to threaten, because threatening me would have meant admitting I was worth the effort. Now there's a folder on a desk with my name on it, and a woman from the council's Rift Anomaly division standing close enough that I can smell the ozone still clinging to her coat from whatever transport brought her back here this fast. 2 days. That's all it took to go from invisible to owned. I should back up. After the Guardian collapsed into black mist in the courtyard, after Cole walked out of Vane's office the first time with a warning about heirs who wouldn't be interested in testing me, I spent one night alone in my dorm staring at a suppression number that had dropped further in a single afternoon than it had in 3 entire years. 12%. That's what was left holding back whatever the throne actually wanted me to become. 12%. And a warning glowing quietly in the corner of my vision that something else out there had felt the breach too. I didn't sleep. I lay there running through everything Cole had said, everything the Guardian had said before it dissolved, everything Dean Vane hadn't said but clearly wanted to. Somewhere out there, another person carried the same crown-shaped mark burned into my chest. Somewhere out there, that person had just felt their own suppression crack the same way mine had. I told myself I had a full day before anything else happened. I was wrong by about 6 hours. Cole showed up before breakfast, and now here we are, less than 48 hours after a Throne Guardian nearly leveled half the academy, and she's telling me to sign my life away like it's a formality. Walk me through it, I say, nodding at the folder, since apparently I don't get to read it in private. Cole's mouth curves, not quite a smile, more like she's amused I bothered asking. Controlled integration, she says. You train under council supervision. Council instructors, council facilities, council oversight on every increment your suppression drops. In exchange, the council extends you protection, housing, resources, a legal designation that keeps rival academies and independent rift hunters from trying to claim you as a discovery. Protection, I repeat, or a leash. Semantics. They're not semantics to the person wearing it. Dean Vane finally speaks, arms crossed, voice carefully even in the way I've learned means he's choosing every word like it costs him something. Agent Cole, Mr. Kade is still a student of this academy. Any integration proposal involving a minor bloodline anomaly requires academy consultation, not just council mandate. The academy, Cole says, turning toward him with the same unbothered calm, nearly lost containment of a Category 1 breach 2 days ago. I'd think twice before leaning on academy authority as your strongest argument right now, Dean. The room goes quiet in a way that makes the air feel thinner. I look between them, and for the first time, I understand something I didn't fully register during our first meeting. Dean Vane isn't just protecting me out of institutional obligation. There's something personal buried under that careful, controlled expression, something he's not ready to say out loud in front of Cole. I file that thought away. It's not the most important thing happening in this room, but it might be later. What happens if I refuse? I ask. Cole's eyes flick back to me, and something in them sharpens. Then you're an unregistered anomaly with a confirmed Category 1 incident tied to your name, operating without oversight, in a region where at least one other awakened bloodline signature is already active. The Council doesn't like loose variables, Mr. Kade. Refusing the offer doesn't make you invisible again. It just means we monitor you without helping you. That's not protection. That's surveillance with extra steps. It's both, she says. Welcome to how the Council actually works. I think about the voice from the rift, the way it warned me the world would try to kill me first and ask questions never if it saw what I was before I was ready. I think about 3 years of hiding, 3 years of choosing invisibility, because visibility meant being turned into a weapon or a threat. Cole's folder isn't asking me to choose between those two things. It's promising both at once, wrapped up as a favor. No, I say. Cole tilts her head slightly, like the answer genuinely surprises her, though I doubt much actually does. No to the entire proposal, or no to specific terms. No to council instructors, no to council facilities, no to a leash with a nicer name. I glance at Dean Vane. But I'm not stupid enough to think I can handle whatever's coming alone either. Vane's expression shifts, just barely, something almost like relief flickering under the careful neutrality. There is precedent, he says slowly, choosing his words like he's building a case in real time, for academy-supervised bloodline training that satisfies council oversight requirements without full integration. I could personally oversee Mr. Kade's development, report progress to the council on an agreed schedule, and maintain academy jurisdiction over his case. Cole studies him for a long moment. I get the sense this isn't the first time she's negotiated something like this, and I get the sense she's already decided how this conversation ends, and is just enjoying watching us get there ourselves. Interesting, she finally says. A compromise where the council still gets its data, and you still get to keep pretending you're protecting him out of pure academic duty. Something flickers across Vane's face at that, gone too fast for me to read clearly, but Cole clearly saw exactly what she meant to provoke. I'll take the proposal back to my division, she says, gathering the untouched folder off the desk. Unofficial academy supervision, with quarterly council assessment. That's the compromise I can sell upward. It won't satisfy everyone. It might not satisfy me, honestly. But it buys you time, Mr. Kade, and time is apparently something you're good at using. Is that a compliment? It's an observation, she says. Don't get used to the distinction being generous. She heads for the door, then pauses, glancing back the way she did the first time she left this office, like she can't resist one final unsettling exit line. The other signature moved last night, she says. Small shift. Regional, not local. But it's moving, Mr. Kade. And signatures like that don't wander randomly. Something's pulling it. I'd start wondering what. Then she's gone, and the office feels significantly colder without her in it. Dean Vane exhales slowly, sitting on the edge of his desk instead of behind it, which is the first time I've ever seen him look less than perfectly composed. That went better than I expected, he says. That went like a woman letting us think we won something, I answer. Also accurate. He studies me for a moment. Unofficial training starts tomorrow, early mornings, before classes. I won't lie to you about the difficulty, or the danger. What's inside you isn't something either of us fully understands yet. But you know something, I say. You've known something since the moment you mentioned the seal registering activity 3 years ago. He doesn't answer right away, and for a second I think he's going to deflect the way he did during our first conversation. Instead, he looks at me with something that feels dangerously close to honesty. Not today, he says. Not because I'm hiding it from you forever, Mr. Kade. Because some truths are heavier when they arrive too early. You have enough to carry right now. It's not a satisfying answer. It's also somehow not a lie. And after 3 years of building my entire existence out of careful ones, I've gotten disturbingly good at telling the difference. I leave his office more unsettled than when I walked in, and that's saying something considering I walked in facing a council agent holding a folder with my name on it. The rest of the day moves like static, half real, half blurred by exhaustion I didn't realize I was carrying until the adrenaline finally wore off. Students still stare. Some whisper. A few actually work up the courage to say something directly to my face, mostly variations of the same question. Is it true you fought a throne guardian alone? I give the same answer every time. A short nod. Nothing more. 3 years of practiced invisibility doesn't just disappear because the truth cracked open in one afternoon. If anything, it makes the habit feel more necessary, not less. Sarah finds me at lunch, sliding into the seat across from me without asking. The way she's apparently decided is her right now that we've had exactly 2 real conversations in 3 years. Cole came back, she says, not a question. You heard already? Half the staff wing heard. Apparently agents from the Black Division don't exactly whisper when they're annoyed. She studies my face. What did she want? I tell her, mostly. The proposal? The leash disguised as protection. Vane's counteroffer. The compromise that bought me time instead of freedom. I leave out the part about the other signature moving. Not because I don't trust her, because saying it out loud makes it feel more real, and I'm not ready for it to feel more real yet. Sarah listens without interrupting, which is somehow more unsettling than if she'd reacted loudly. When I finish, she's quiet for a moment, turning something over behind her eyes. I've been reading, she finally says. Reading what? Everything I can find on Throne Guardians, which, for the record, is almost nothing. The Academy Archive has exactly 3 references, and 2 of them are redacted so heavily they're basically useless. She leans forward slightly. But the 3rd one mentions something interesting. Guardians aren't just protection, they're tests. They only manifest when a bearer's suppression crosses a threshold significant enough to be noticed by whatever the throne actually is. So the Guardian wasn't random. Nothing about any of this is random, Ashton. She says my name carefully, like she's testing how much weight it can hold now that half the Academy knows something about me they didn't 3 days ago. I don't think you understand yet how big this actually is. A Category 1 anomaly isn't just a big scary word the Council uses to sound important. It's a classification reserved for events that historically precede something much larger. Define larger. I don't know yet, she admits. That's what worries me. I want to tell her everything then. The voice, the throne, the suppression number ticking down in the corner of my vision like a countdown I never agreed to start. But 3 years of instinct doesn't unlearn itself in a week, and some part of me is still terrified that the moment I hand someone the full truth, they'll look at me differently, permanently, the way Cole looks at me, like a specimen instead of a person. Sarah isn't Cole, though. Some quieter part of me already knows that. I'm just not ready to test it yet. Be careful with the digging, I say instead. If the archive's redacting information this heavily, someone doesn't want it found. I know. She almost smiles. That's exactly why I'm not stopping. Across the courtyard, half hidden behind a stone column, Damien watches us with an expression I catch only because I happen to glance up at the wrong moment. He looks away too fast, like he wasn't supposed to be caught looking at all. I don't think much of it in the moment. I should have. Damien Cross doesn't handle humiliation well, never has. 3 years of being the undisputed best hunter in our year built something in him that doesn't know how to process losing, and the sparring match 2 days ago wasn't just a loss. It was a public execution of everything he'd built his entire identity around. What I don't find out until later, from Sarah, who hears it secondhand from a records assistant she's apparently cultivated as a source, is that Damien spent that same afternoon in the Academy's administrative archive requesting access to sealed disciplinary files from 3 years ago. My file, specifically. The Hollow Rift incident. The one the Academy quietly buried the moment I climbed back out alive. He doesn't get full access. The file's classification is higher than a student's clearance allows. But he gets enough. A partial summary, a reference to unauthorized access to a sealed rift, a note flagging the incident as resolved without further action, despite the rift's containment status registering as compromised. It's not the full truth. It's barely a fragment. But it's enough for someone determined to prove I cheated my way into whatever I've become, and Damien Cross has never in his life been more determined about anything. I don't know any of this yet. I'm still sitting in the courtyard with Sarah, half convincing myself that Damien's stare was nothing, that humiliation fades on its own, that people move on. I really should know better by now. That evening, my first unofficial training session with Dean Vane starts in a section of the academy I didn't even know existed, a reinforced sublevel beneath the main sparring halls that requires a key only staff apparently know about. The walls are lined with something that hums faintly, energy-dampening wards according to Vane, built specifically to contain training sessions that might otherwise level half a building. Given recent events, he says dryly, I thought it prudent. Given recent events, I echo, prudent might be underselling it. He almost smiles. Almost. The training itself isn't what I expect. I expected sparring, drills, something physical to match the exam I just walked through. Instead, Vane has me sit on the floor of the sealed chamber and simply focus, eyes closed, attention turned entirely inward toward the suppression number I've spent 3 years trying not to look at too closely. Power without control is a countdown, he says, voice quiet in the humming dark. I need to understand exactly what you're carrying before either of us can safely lower it further. You make it sound like the 12% left is dangerous. Everything about you right now is dangerous, Mr. Kade. The only question is whether it's dangerous in a way we can manage or dangerous in a way that manages us. That lands harder than I want to admit. I focus the way he asks, and for the first time since the Guardian collapsed, the voice from the rift stirs, faint, distant, like something surfacing slowly from deep water. He is careful, this one, it says, meaning Vane, though I don't know how it can sense him at all. Careful is useful. Careful is also slow. You do not have the luxury of slow much longer. I almost ask why, but the voice fades again before I can, the way it always does when it decides I've heard enough for one conversation. Vane watches my expression carefully. Something? It talks less now than it used to, I say, but when it does, it's never good news. Ancient things rarely deliver good news, he says. They deliver necessary truths, wrapped in whatever version of patience they still have left. We work for almost 2 hours. By the end, I don't feel stronger exactly, but I feel steadier, like something that was rattling loose inside my chest has settled slightly closer to where it's supposed to sit. Small progress. Real progress, though, which is more than I expected from a first session. I leave the sublevel exhausted in a way training never used to leave me, climb the stairs back toward the dorms, and nearly walk straight into Corin Ray before either of us realizes the other is there. I don't know his name yet, not in this moment. He's just a stranger standing too still in an empty hallway that shouldn't have anyone in it this late, dressed in a transfer uniform I don't recognize from any current student roster, watching me with an expression that's somehow both completely blank and entirely focused at once. The mark on my chest pulses, sharp, sudden, unmistakable. He feels it too. I watch it land on his face, the same recognition hitting him that's hitting me, both of us going still in the same half-second like two predators realizing they've wandered into the same territory. You, he says, voice flat, quiet, controlled in a way that feels more unsettling than if he'd shown any obvious reaction at all. You're the one who broke the crucible. And you're not supposed to be here, I answer, because it's the only thing I can think to say that isn't a question I'm not ready to hear the answer to. Not yet, technically. His eyes drop briefly to my chest, exactly where the mark burns beneath my shirt, then back up to my face. Transfer paperwork finalizes tomorrow morning. You felt it, I say. Not a question either. The pulse. Yeah. Something shifts behind his expression, cold, calculating, the same way Cole studies things she's deciding whether to weaponize. Guess that confirms what the signature reading already told me. My pulse spikes. You knew before you got here. I've known for weeks, he says. Ever since my own suppression started slipping. Ever since something ancient started whispering that someone else out there carried the same mark I do. He takes one slow step closer, and I feel every muscle in my body tighten in response. Some instinct built over 3 years of secrecy screaming that this conversation is more dangerous than the Guardian ever was. I came here to find you, Ashton Kade, not to make friends. Hearing him say my name, a name he shouldn't have any reason to know yet, sends something cold crawling down my spine. Then why come at all? Because the throne only holds one, he says, voice dropping lower, quieter, somehow more dangerous for how calm it stays. And I intend to be the one sitting on it. For a long moment, neither of us moves. The hallway feels smaller than it did 30 seconds ago. The dampening wards from the training chamber below suddenly feeling very far away. You're wrong about that, I finally say. About it only holding one. Something flickers behind his eyes, gone too fast to name. We'll see. Then he turns and walks away, footsteps unnervingly silent, the same way Sarah's are, disappearing around the corner before I can decide whether following him would be smart or catastrophic. I don't sleep well that night either. The interface flickers into view once, briefly, sometime past midnight, and this time it isn't a suppression number that catches my attention first. Second bloodline signature, stabilized, local range confirmed. My stomach drops. Local, not regional anymore. Local means here. Local means the shift Cole mentioned wasn't the signature wandering aimlessly at all. It means Corrin already arrived exactly where it was heading, and the throne, or whatever's left of it, pulled him here on purpose. I lie awake running through everything that's happened in less than 72 hours. A crucible that broke the measurement system, a sparring match that shattered 3 years of careful invisibility, a guardian that nearly leveled the academy courtyard, a council agent offering me a leash disguised as protection, a dean hiding something he isn't ready to say out loud, a rival who's spent 3 years humiliated and is now digging through sealed records looking for a weapon to use against me. An ally quietly researching lore the Academy clearly doesn't want found. And now, somehow, impossibly, the second heir the Guardian warned me about isn't just moving toward Grimwood. He's already here, standing in a hallway, telling me to my face that only one of us gets to survive whatever this actually is. I close my eyes, and for the first time since I climbed out of that rift 3 years ago, the voice speaks without me calling for it. Low, certain, heavier than I've ever heard it. 2 marks, 1 region. This was never a coincidence, and it will not end quietly. What is it then? I ask into the dark of my empty dorm room. If not a coincidence, the voice doesn't answer right away. When it finally does, the words land like a verdict I don't have any way to appeal. It is the beginning of a war the throne has been waiting 3 centuries to finish, and you, little vessel, just became one of its first 2 soldiers.